So can I have you all just tell me a little bit about your background and how you found yourself in law enforcement?
Yeah, I went to Illinois State over in Bloomington Normal for college. I graduated in 2006. I originally started computer science. I loved computers. That was kind of my passion. And then, I don't know, one day, and I still distinctly remember, like, what started me down this path was I was walking home with sunglasses on, and a guy was like, "Hey, you look like a cop." And I was like, okay. Didn't think anything of it. And then shortly into computer science, probably my sophomore year, I switched majors just because it wasn't what I thought it would be. So I switched to criminal justice, and I found that I really loved finding out the history and the background of, all the way from the Pinkertons all the way till, the different prison systems. And I really liked it, so I really got into criminal justice. My grades went way up, mainly because it was something I loved. And then I did a ride-along or an internship with my hometown Pekin, Illinois Police Department, and it just cemented that this is what I want to do. It's a smaller town. Being able to drive around with officers there really opened my eyes to things you don't normally see, because people don't normally see bad stuff happening. We see it, we hear it in the news, we read about it in the newspaper, but we don't see it happen. So and to be able to be like, it's same thing, kind of cliche, but I want to help people. I don't have the brains to be a doctor, or a surgeon, or anything like that. So I would love to be a school teacher, but that's just not kind of where my life went. So I graduated from college, applied for police departments, and I was waiting to hear back from a couple police departments in my hometown area. And then there's a federal prison in Pekin, Illinois that I applied for also, because I thought, why not, So I applied there and I got hired there first. So I was like, sure, I took it, and I loved it. A lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to work in a prison. There's all these bad people. It's like, yeah, it's not my job to punish people. It's not my job to go in there and make judgment on them, because they've already been judged. It's just my job to make sure that they make it out, or that they get up, they go to bed, and they don't cause problems with each other, that everyone basically makes it out alive. They can do their time, and just to talk to them, like, because I get it, they're stuck with another 120 some guys in a housing unit. That would wear on you a lot. So just kind of keep it light. It's not my job to punish them. It's not my job to treat them like animals, because they're not. They're doing their time. That could be me in there if I had made a different life choice. So to try to look at them as humans, because that's what anyone is. Anyone, especially in prisons, a lot of times we look at people, they're bad men. They did bad things, but maybe they're trying to atone for it. So I did that for about 3 years. Moved down to Memphis. Worked at the Federal Correctional Complex in Forest City, Arkansas, where same thing. I loved working down there for about another 2.5 years. We moved up here to Cedar Rapids area, and I got a job working with Raining Rose, because I was in between. I was trying to find jobs, working there, just doing regular production stuff, all the while I was applying at Cedar Rapids and Linn County. I think I applied for Hiawatha, or maybe Marion, one of the two. But I also applied for the Department of Veterans Affairs, because they have a police service, because it's a federal property. They have federal laws they enforce. And they said, hey, yeah, we'll come in for an interview. I interviewed there. It was nice because I was already a federal employee, so I could transfer a lot of my time over. So I got hired on there, worked down at the VA as a police officer for a couple years, and I liked it. It was a great job. It was just in the hospital, so you're doing minor things and dealing with a lot of psychological patients. But they're veterans, so that was and I wasn't a veteran, so I felt like I was taking a job from a veteran, because a lot of the guys that I work with were veterans. So I've been applying, same thing, once again, to Linn County and Cedar Rapids. Finally got through the hiring process with Linn County. I look back on it now that I almost didn't get hired, because I turned my application in, and I turned in my college transcript. I didn't turn my high school transcript in. I thought I did. And then one of the majors at the time, John Godar, who's a great guy. I love that guy so much. He called me, and he was like, hey, you didn't turn your application in with high school diploma. Normally we don't accept them because you don't have it. He's like, but I contacted your high school for you, and I got a copy of it. And I was like, that's awesome. He didn't have to do that. And I really appreciated that, because I felt like, well, this guy cares. He doesn't have to. I'm just a name or a number. But I got hired on by Linn County, went through the police academy, which was not as fun as the movie was. If you've ever seen the movie, it's not that fun, but it's also not like a straight boot camp where they're yelling at you and stuff. It was a lot of physical stuff, but that's what you want. We want cops that are in good physical shape. We don't want someone to have to chase somebody and they can't make it. The criminal law, aspect and learning all the different things, a lot of it was very broad because they're all saying, when you go to your department, you'll figure out how your department does OWIs or operating with intoxicated charges. You figure out how your department does controlled substances and how every department's different. So graduated there, and then at Linn County, everybody starts in the jail. And a lot of people, especially the younger, I think I don't even know how old I was. I might have been early 30s.
What year was this?
This was 2014.
14.
So yeah, I would have been 31. I don't know. Like I said, I'm bad with doing math on the spot. But it was nice because I had that background in the federal prisons. So I was like, whatever, I can do this, no problem. And starting to work with the inmates there, it was fine because like I wasn't, kind of that fishbowl look or like glassy eye where I'm like, oh gosh, these guys are dangerous. Because unfortunately or fortunately, I knew some of them from when I was in federal prison. I met a couple of them there, and I'm thinking like, this is weird that I met you in Arkansas, and somehow we're together in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. That's like a very, like I was like, well, this is, but they knew me. They knew I was fair. I gained a nickname because when I was at Forest City, at the time, the rapper Clifford Harris was there, and they called him T.I. And one of the inmates down there was up at Linn County, and one day he just said, "Hey man, you was there with T.I., right?" And I said, "Yeah, I was. Yeah, I was there." And I don't know how it stuck, but everybody in the jail, and to this day, I'm not a rapper. I don't, I'm not, that's what they call me. So when I'm out and about and I hear somebody yell, "Hey T.I.," I know it's not the rapper, but I know where I know them from, which is nice. But I also know that like they're not, jumping at me and attack. Like, I think it's more of a nice thing of respect. There's a couple of guys that know my real last name that would call me that, but regardless, I told them, I don't care, whatever you want to call me, man. I'm 100% fine with that. So I did about 5.5 years in the jail, and like I said, I loved every minute of it. Obviously we had good days and bad days, a lot of overtime, whether you wanted it or not, but it was there. But I look back on it like that's part of the job, a 24/7 operation. You have to have somebody there. It's not like a job where if I'm working at Transamerica and I'm 9 to 5 and I'm done for the day. Like someone's got to be there. Someone's got to be there to feed people, to be watching over people, making sure they're okay. So I was there for a while. Everyone's goal is I want to make it out to the road. That's what they start with. Some people never leave the jail because they like it. And they like the environment. They like the days off. They like the routine. It's always sunny. It's always 70 degrees. It's 68 degrees in there. You're never getting rained on. You're never getting snowed on. Yeah, you have to deal with some people when they come in at their lowest, but the nice part is you get to see them, kind of beat their addictions while they're there because they have to, and there was a few guys that they came in and I remember they were, they'd be like, man, I'm so sorry I was like that when I came in. I told them, that's fine. Like, I get it. I'm not going to hold a grudge. I don't hold a grudge against Stanley. At all. Like if I saw him, I'm not going to treat him any different from anybody else because part of that's the way I was raised, but that's just the way we should treat people, is we should treat them like today's a new day. I'm not going to have any preconceived notions, whether they killed a cop or whether they killed a child. Yeah, I have my personal opinion on that, but I'm not going to treat them any different because that's not my job. It's not my job to punish them. It's my job to make sure everybody gets along and everybody goes home at the end of the day.
You said something to me before we started about how you would still protect Stanley Donahue if you had to.
And I know that's crazy. It's still kind of crazy for me to think about, but I look at my job is to protect and serve, hands down. It's not protect and serve people I like, people I don't like. And that's the tough part about being a cop is you have to look at there are some times that's why we have deputies or guards or bailiffs in the jails or when we escort people. When I arrest somebody, they're mine. I'm responsible for them. So if I'm walking them out and someone's trying to attack them, my job is to protect them. And as much as it kind of even shocks me to even think that, but I would, in a heartbeat, and it doesn't matter what he did to me, doesn't matter what he did to anybody. That's my job. It's my job to make sure that I protect and serve the people of Linn County. And while he's here, while he's in our custody, I'm not going to hold a grudge to him. I don't have to like him as a person. I don't have to go out for drinks with him after work, stuff like that. But I have to make sure, I would do it for anybody. From, like I said, the person who, a mass murder of 100 people to somebody in there for just a simple felony or a simple intox at the time. You know, that's my job, to make sure that they're okay. You know, it's not my job to punish. That's what we have prison for, and it's not even punishment. It's more just a confinement. It's not my job to pass judgment, because my job is to present the facts to, you know, make the original arrest or whatever, and present the facts to the county attorney so they can present the facts. You know, but yeah, it's not. I look at it. You know, that's really what I love about this job, is like, hey, no matter how much you hate me, no matter how much people don't like a police officer, I'm still gonna, you know, I'm still gonna show up at a call. You could be out there protesting that you hate cops one day and you're a victim of a crime the next day. I'm not gonna show up and have that, well, sorry, you know, because one, I don't get that right. But two, I wouldn't want anyone in my family or myself to be on that same end. You know, treat everyone like you want to be treated type thing is 100% accurate, you know, but also my job is to make sure people are safe, you know, to the detriment of myself. Like I said before, if I'm glad it was me. I'm glad, you know, and I think back on the shooting that, you know, the store wasn't closed. So and somebody came in after I had gotten shot to try to get gas. So, you know, and he was shoot away because obviously, you know, what was going on. But I think back on, man, if that would have been some other day, and that could have been a mom and her 2 kids, and this guy wanted to get away, and he may have held them up, and I don't know what would have happened. But like I said, I'm glad it was me. With everything that happened to me, I had a vest on. If I would have died there and it would have been me, I think I could have gone to my grave happy, knowing that I kept somebody else safe. You know, I mean, it's tough to think back on. You know, it's really, I think anybody, you know, it's tough to think on them dying. It's tough to think on anyone dying, really. But like, now that I know how close I came to it, I think it definitely holds a different respect for me. You know, it's, it could easily, you know, it could have been like that. It could have happened, and I could have zigged when I zagged, and I couldn't be here right now. So.
How does that affect you every day, even going into when you start your shift every day?
I look at it, you know, it's always there. You know, the people that I would worry about were people like, oh man, I'm fearless. You know, because fear is a great part of this job. It keeps you, you know, paying attention to what's your surroundings. If you think you're bulletproof, I'm telling you, you're not. You know, I think having that fear of, yeah, this could be my last day, it really makes you appreciate what you're doing. You know, because you're going to try to do your best every day. Because I could get in my car tomorrow to work from 2 to 10, and it's icy out, and I could slip off the side of the road and slam into a plow. But I'm not going to let that affect me. I'm not going to be afraid to go to work, because, like I said, I love doing this job. But part of this job is, you know, there are bad things, and we see a lot of bad stuff that, you know, not that I don't want to see, not that I'm looking forward to seeing it, but I see it. You know, the dead bodies, you know, I'm on an accident investigation, so I see a lot of, you know, fatalities with, not a ton, but I've seen a lot of motor vehicle fatalities, you know, because that's usually what we get called out for. So we go out there, you know, and we're taking, you know, pictures and all this stuff, and going to the autopsies and having to see that death that a lot of people, and thank God they don't have to see it, because it's not fun. You definitely become more or less immune to things, you know. I mean, there's always a joke, and the cops always have that gallows humor, you know, where you know, you're in on a call and there's a dead body and the guys are joking about stuff, and whether that's right or not, you know, I mean, everyone does it, you know, and at some point or other they've had some sort of, you know, oh man, that guy's not getting up or whatever, but that's how we cope with it, because it's a lot to see every, you know, not us, not in this area, but, you know, just police in general, seeing death more than anyone should have to see it. You know, it's like working in a hospital, in a hospice ward, you know, I mean, you see people dying all the time, you know, you become almost numb to it, and not in a good way.
So let's talk about that day.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
If you know, you were on a regular shift,
yeah.
It was a normal shift,
yeah.
just like any day, and we talked about Coggin being as rural as it is, where
mm-hmm.
nothing's really going on.
Yeah.
Play me through those days, or the times.
You know, I look at it like it's, you know, we try not to make routines about ourselves, but everyone makes some sort of minor routine. The way we do we set up our car, we've always got a routine, you know, and I try to not have you know, at 10 p.m. I'm here, because then that's a bad routine to set up. But like, you know, we have normal things. I do patrol through my entire zone when I first start, you know, looking for vehicles that are broke down, people need help. and then sometimes I do traffic. But that, like I said, that night I remember that it was just a monsoon. It was the best I can explain it. And it was like, man, I'm sitting there thinking like, oh, geez, what's going to be? And I thought to myself, and we don't normally say the Q word. We don't normally say quiet because, between our dispatchers and when you go to hospital and you say words like that, people don't like that, But I probably thought to myself, oh, man, it's going to be a quiet night because it's pouring down rain. No one's going to be out doing stuff. Why would people be out? It's terrible. I don't want to be out in the weather. There's a reason a lot of cops don't pull people over when it's pouring down rain. Not because you weren't doing anything wrong, but I don't want to get out and get wet. It's a fact of the matter, a fact of life. That's, if you're up to doing bad things, if you're speeding in the rain, probably it's not a smart thing. But there's always a couple people that are like, I'm not pulling anybody over. I'm not getting soaked. But if you got to do it, you got to do it. But I remember just sitting there up in Pinnakin Ridge, just watching the rain come down. It was like sideways rain. And I'm thinking, oh man, all right, well, this is gonna be a nice quiet night. I can go sit up in a town somewhere, listen to a book on tape or something, just kind of like just relax. And I got called to it wasn't a domestic, but it was like something, a property dispute about I remember it was an RC car, and I remember going up there and I'm like, didn't know these houses were back here off the Wapsie up near Pinnakin Ridge. I'd never been back there, so I was up there talking to these guys. Same thing, just a normal day. And I remember driving through Central City all the way up Prairieburg Road, and I stopped in Prairieburg Fire where I usually sit on Sundays, just shooting radar. Not a whole lot of people ever come up there because it's, but it's still, my presence is there. If somebody is flying through town at 50 miles an hour, they'll see me, they'll slow down. It's that officer presence that we like to use a lot versus like I don't have to get out and do anything though. There's a cop there, I better slow down. On the side of the road when you see a cop, you're like, I better slow down. He's probably not even shooting radar. He's probably doing something on his log or on Facebook or something, but nobody knows that. So I was just sitting there, and our shift change, it happens from 2 to 10, so 10 o'clock, some guys went off and new shift came on, and shortly thereafter, there was a call of there's a burglary in progress at the Cog and Casey's, and they dispatched Deputy Oltman there first because he had just came on for 10 to 6. I don't know, he was over near Central City Road, near Alice Road maybe, so he was pretty close, but I knew it was in my zone, so I was like, that's mine. I wasn't mad that they didn't dispatch me, but also a lot of times when there's nothing happening, when something does happen, we're all like, bees to honey. We're all on there fast, whether or not it was going to be real or not. There's usually 2 or 3 guys that are going to go, because if it is real, we want people there. If it's not real, okay, I get there, I tell everybody, hey, you guys slow down, you take off, you don't need to show up. But driving there, I didn't even have like a bad feeling until I turned south on 13. And that's when Deputy Oltman said, hey, there was a car there at the gas station this morning. So that would have been the 20th at like 3 in the morning, that there was a guy trying to, look in the store and they wouldn't let him in. It was a gray van. And then, okay. And like I said, I remember turning south, turn my sirens off, still my lights on, just in case people were there so they get out of the way. And I didn't want my sirens because it was a summer night and they project a lot farther. And I remember just pulling up, as I'm pulling in, it's kind of one of those like, okay, this might be real. I see a van there, and I remember, like I said, the last thing I think I got on my radio and said before I got out was, the van's here. And I remember getting out and grabbing my stuff and, thinking like, oh, okay, this, maybe it's gonna be nothing. And then as I walked in, it happened. It's very like, time slows down, but it also speeds up. I remember, like I said, from me to you, that's how close I was to him. I remember looking him square in the eyes as I'm opening that door. Before I crossed that threshold, I'm looking him square in the eyes thinking like, okay, this is odd. There's a guy with his hood pulled up with a trash bag over his, and it's not like he was just standing there with a glass of milk or, a candy bar. That's not normally something I would encounter inside a Casey's. But I also noticed when I was walking up that I don't see any clerks behind the desk, or standing up right behind the counter. So, part of my job is I can legally detain people when I have a crime that I was told was being committed. An armed robbery is occurring.
So you knew he was armed?
At that point, I don't believe I did. There may have been some radio traffic. I don't recall ever hearing that he was armed. And I haven't gone back and listened to the radio traffic. There's so much, you got so much radio traffic going on. There's a lot of different, I scan Cedar Rapids and Marion too, so there's other stuff I hear. I don't recall ever hearing them saying he was armed. But I remember, like, okay, this is, there's a black, I think they said there's a black male, someone's robbing the Casey's. I don't know if they said it was a black male, but I remember, pulling up there, and like I said, he fit the bill. At least I was confident that I can detain this person. something's not up. If I had cashiers there, I wouldn't just walk into Casey's and be like, hey, turn around. But there were no cashiers. I was told there was a robbery. He's got his hood pulled up. He's got a bag over his shoulder. Okay, I think I have enough reasonable suspicion to detain somebody. So that's what I was trying to do, you know. I put my flashlight down. I remember grabbing him on the arm, telling him, hey, turn around. And after that, it was just like I said, time slowed down, but it sped up. It was one of those surreal moments, you know, like where you have that feeling of like, this isn't happening. You know, like when you have a dream, you know, and you're like, oh man, I didn't turn my homework into my professor or something. You know, you're like, oh, thank God it didn't happen. But like, it was like one of those like, this isn't happening. No, this isn't happening. And it was like, the only thing I can say, it was like the most intense pain. And then it was like the pain kind of went away. I think it was just because like I had adrenaline rushing through me. And I remember just falling like a sack of potatoes. And I hit my head. I thought I fell on my back, hit my head. I watched the video, I never did. But wherever I hit my head, I fractured my skull right near the spine. But it was like, you know, that like you just got punched or you just got in a bad, like that stars everywhere where you're just like concussed. You know, I definitely had a concussion where I was out of it. And I'm thinking like, you know, kind of that grogginess, like what's going on, you know? And I'm thinking like, I can't feel my legs. And that's when I feel, you know, this guy tugging on my gun. And I remember just thinking like, don't kill me, man. I remember saying it too, you know, please don't kill me. I don't know if he could hear me, you know, and I remember like, I was like, man, I can't feel my legs at all. And that was the scary part. I'm thinking like, oh God, I just got shot, but oh God, I'm gonna be paralyzed. You know, and obviously been used to walking for, you know, 38 years, you know, like that's kind of have that oh crap moment where your heart starts racing even more. You're thinking, I'm never gonna walk again. And then I started thinking, oh man, I don't know where I was shot. My chest hurt, my leg hurt. Like I said, I couldn't feel my leg. Like I remember, you know, like when you try to move your leg, it's easy, no problem. But like when you try to move it, and you're just like, I can't feel anything there. I had a little bit of panic. I remember closing my eyes and just laying down, and just like, you know, almost the feeling. And I hate to say it, but I mean, it's true that I almost wanted to give up. You know, just like I'm just gonna close my eyes. And, okay, I'm gonna die right here on the floor in Coggin, Iowa. I remember closing my eyes, and then like, so I don't know what it was, and you know, whether you're spiritual or not, you know, I look at like I felt like a jolt. You know, whether it was adrenaline, it might be adrenaline, but it felt like it was like a jolt from God saying like, nope. You're not going out. I remember just like waking up and being like, no. I was like, and I got so mad. I remember I was so mad at the door because I could feel the door kind of like hitting my back. I remember kicking that door, that Casey's door with my good leg. I could start to feel it again. And I'm thinking like, I was yelling, you know, help, help. I remember trying to get on my body mic and key it up, and it was just, I don't know if my brain wasn't working right. It just wouldn't. I couldn't get anything to work. I remember, you know, my body camera wasn't working. I remember taking my body camera off and you know, recording a message to my family, thinking like, man, this is the last thing they're gonna see, you know. And of course, I found out later my body camera wasn't working. You know, I remember saying that, you know, thinking like, okay, well at least they'll get to see it, you know, like. And that didn't work. I remember trying to keep my radio, and it didn't work. I remember taking it off and throwing it across, just frustrated, and you know, yelling help. Just, you know, to me it felt like time stretched. Like you know, I was only down for maybe 5-10 minutes maybe, but it felt like it was an hour where you're just thinking, man, this might be it, you know. And then a local, one of our, he's a homeless individual who's, I don't know if he's still up there now, but Jared Foy, I'd had a couple dealings with him before, but he was always a decent person, and we never had any bad interactions. We never had any like positive stuff. He was homeless, he wanted to be homeless, so we left him alone, you know. It's no crime against being homeless. But I remember him coming up and, hey man, are you know, like, oh God, you know, kind of what happened. And I don't recall my conversation with him, but because shortly thereafter, Deputy Oldman arrived on scene, and, you know, and I remember him telling me like, hey man, it's not looking good. And I remember just telling him like, oh man, you know, like, I remember telling him, you know, telling my family I love him. And I think he told me in a not nice way, you know, not safe for TV, but, you know, you're gonna tell him yourself. You know, and he bandaged me up. He put a tourniquet up my leg at that point. And, you know, obviously they could tell my leg was injured, but nobody knew it was my hip. So the tourniquet wouldn't do much for that. But I mean, he helped a lot until, you know, I mean, we're all kind of basic life-saving, you know. I can put the white stuff on the red stuff and stop the blood from you know. He put a chest seal on me because they looked like I had a sucking chest wound from the vest hit, because he cut all that stuff off, and it's like, oh geez, better safe than sorry type thing. Shortly thereafter, the paramedics arrived. Two of them that I know pretty well. One of them's a deputy, but he also moonlights with the paramedics in Center Point Ambulance. And they came there, and I mean, I was like, thank God.